All right, what's up, friends? Long time no see. I want to get back in here, get focused back on the videos and sharing what I've learned and what I find. But today, I want to share some basics, right? Return to the basics. And the reason is because it's almost New Year, New Year, new me. That's what the kids are saying. And so, what I want to do, right, is build a new foundation. We're born into the world, right? And as children, we're told everything is what it is, and we grow up and we learn, and it's all built on what we were told. But as anyone knows who knows anything, everything that you're taught by this world is a lie. Okay, this world teaches you what this world wants to teach you. It's not true. They teach you the physical side of everything. Every single fact that you know, there is a twin that is an inversion of that fact that is the actual truth. So, what we're going to do, right, is we're going to take all these things that people learn and they know and they're taught as children, and we're going to throw them to the side, okay? And then we're going to look at what the Bible says and what we can see, and then we're going to build a new foundation, okay? So we're going to get into some things that might make some people upset, right? But this is all just common sense, almost. It might make some people mad, but the mark of intelligence, right? Which is an interesting word, the mark of intelligence. The trait that you have that makes you intelligent is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it as true or committing to it, okay? You can entertain the thought that a rounded bowl is actually a square, as long as you don't believe it. But, just an example. I just ask that rather than, if you hear something you don't like, don't say, oh, this dude's a fucking nut, and then, turn it off. Just consider, right? Because everything that we know we're going to set to the side, and then we're going to go over some basics, and then we go from there. So, first, we need to talk about the most general thing, right? Evil. We should acknowledge a few things here. The light and the darkness, right? Good and evil, love and hate, fear and love, same thing. There's only love and fear. And everything that you feel falls in between those two somewhere. That's it. Duality, polarity, whatever. So, the light shines on the darkness constantly, but the darkness doesn't comprehend it. So, the reason I say that is to say that evil can't comprehend truth. Evil hides from truth, right? If whatever it is that you do that is wrong, your mind imagines you being exposed for that everywhere you look, okay? It's like subconscious paranoia, so to speak. So, evil, right? Evil will create and believe a delusion based on their own guilt, okay? This is something you can see anywhere you look. Look at somebody who has a bad habit, or they do something they know is wrong. They develop a subconscious paranoia about being exposed. So, when dealing with evil, right, we go back to the beginning. We go to Genesis. Why did God flood the world? Not because men's deeds were evil, not their actions. It was their thoughts. Their thoughts were all evil all the time. I mean, the deeds were a natural progression, right? Because if you think bad things, you do bad things. But the body is the temple, right? And the altar is the mind. Your mind is the altar of God. Your body is the temple of God. So, When you think evil thoughts, right? When you think bad things, you do, and you perceive bad things. If you had never committed an evil deed in your life, ever, when you looked around, you would not see evil. I've done it. Not that I've never done wrong, because I have. But if you don't do evil, you don't see evil. Evil sees evil, and righteousness sees the truth. It's able to perceive it. Evil is not able to perceive the truth. That's just how it is. That's biblical psychology. That's going to be my specialty. Biblical psychology. So, body is the temple. Your mind is the altar. If you fill your mind with evil, you put a bunch of evil on the altar, you end up getting caned. Your sacrifice is not acceptable. And that's why Cain slew Abel. Because he was a bad person. And he did bad things. It all starts with the bad thought. But, I'm getting sidetracked. Alright, so, when one does evil, or sins, right, breaks God's law, they hide. And then they begin to project the fear of being exposed onto everything around them. So, when I say God's laws of life, right, God's laws, they govern life. If you break those laws, you are not life. That's pretty simple, right? Like I said, I'm going to try to keep it simple. God said, here's these rules, and if you're inside, if you're obeying these rules, you are alive. So, when you go and sin and you break those rules, you are no longer alive. Yes, you can die while you're living on this planet, because it's a spirit thing. It's about your mood and your spirit. Am I still visible here? I hope so. Alright, so they project evil deeds, whatever it is that you've done. If you've done good things, you look around, you see good things. If you've done bad things, you look around, you see bad things. They project that everywhere. Because the outside is a reflection of the inside. Whatever you have inside you is what is outside of you. Your unique perspective is key. It's just how it is. When you look at a situation, right, and you see it as sinister or evil or whatever it may be, that's the sinister in you projecting itself onto the situation. So if you look at something and say, oh, that looks like evil, just stop and think about it. Maybe it's something in me that fears that. That's usually how it goes. Clean the inside of the cup. Alright, so what I was just talking about, that is exactly why wicked men cannot understand the Bible. They can't. They have this guilt and this regret and they have a lot of fear of being exposed, and it plagues them, and they project it onto a book of poetry. They hear slavery and they think people tied up to boats and beat with whips and shit for no reason whatsoever. They hear rape and they think that it's a man committing a sexual crime against a woman. Rape means to take the secrets from. Basically anything. If I have something, I don't want you to have it, and you take it, that's a form of rape. It's poetic. So, we got evil, right? It's when you step outside God's laws, you sin, whatever you want to call it. Let's roll over to Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. This is the most familiar and likely the biggest sermon that Jesus did, right? Definitely the longest. So, in this sermon, this beautiful sermon, Jesus said a lot. And if you have a fear, you won't understand it. But he covers a large number of topics, right? And I won't go into everything, but I want to point out just a couple words that everyone seems to overlook and put in context. And that's what we're going to do. Matthew 7:11. It's a good number. 7-11. That's actually my daughter's birthday. 7-7-11. Sophia Hope. Wisdom. Hope. So, anyway, Matthew 7:11. If you then, talking to this massive crowd of people, if you then, being evil. Now, I ain't never heard anybody mention this. This is important information. If you then, giant crowd of average people, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask him? If you, being evil, can do right for your children, how much more can someone do who is not evil? The point is, this large crowd of average people are evil. Now, why that is, I don't know, right? I don't know. But I know two things. Evil is just part of human nature. That's what you're supposed to overcome, is those evil thoughts and desires. And when you do, you're in for a real treat. But the point is, Jesus himself, right? And if you want to say that Jesus was wrong here, whatever. The point is, Jesus said, average man, you are evil. Okay? So, we know what evil is. And we know now, average man is evil. Me and you. Okay? If you can't say, yeah, I'm probably evil, then you got some other issues. But, so now we move on from the premise that the average person is evil. Okay? And like I said, I don't want to take away from this message because it was beautiful. But I want to point out that when Jesus was talking to this large crowd, he said, these average people, if you then being evil. Okay? He was talking to everyone. Man himself is the devil. What's called the devil? That's you and me. This may not seem like a lot because I wasn't supposed to say that last part, but it is. Because it's really important. It's ironic also that this is verse 7:11, chapter 7, verse 11. And in this verse it mentions children and all. But, so, legally, okay? Legally, legal language. Let's look at adult, okay? Adult is one who is able to handle their own affairs. Like, I know that this might sound crazy to you, but that's really not, but you're not supposed to go do what you want to do. You were created for a reason. And if you say, I'm not doing that, I'm going to do what I want, that's called Luciferian. That's when you're operating based on what your ego wants. You want to do what you want to do because you're your own boss. I know, a lot of this sounds crazy. Like, you're telling me that I can't make my own decisions? Well, you can. But you shouldn't. You shouldn't. And this is the ultimate surrender, right? This is deny yourself and follow me. When you can actually say, you can make your plans, whatever. But God trumps all, okay? When your conscience tells you what you're supposed to do and you have a passion for something, you shouldn't be working at McDonald's. Anyway, but to then go and work at McDonald's is technically Luciferian at the very bottom of things. Doing what you believe is right is usually wrong because man is evil. He cannot comprehend what is right. So, man has flawed morals. It's that simple. Like, I think I do pretty well. I despise evil and I love wisdom and I share wisdom freely. But all in all, I still got some evil to work out, you know? Anyway, the average man is evil, okay? And therefore has flawed morals and operates from the ego based on what they believe benefits them the most. But there is someone higher than all of us who wants what's best for us and knows better than we possibly could. But this is a little deeper than I wanted to go, so let's back up and not talk about Luciferians and commercial codes, all of that. So, I do want to add, though, that based on the legal definition, right? The legal definition of adult is one who thinks they can handle their own affairs. Now put that with ERY, right? And that's a suffix that means the condition or state of being, and then you get adultery. Make sense? So, the point is, man is evil, all of us. Nearly all of us. The righteous are like the flame of a candle. Okay? Flame of a candle in an ocean of darkness. You get that? The dark is everywhere, but the light is small and rare. Okay? There is much more darkness, much more darkness than there is light. But both of these, all in all, they come from the same place. The one and only God. Okay? My point here is, I'll get to it. Alright, so both of these, dark and light, they come from the same place. Right? You think, oh, there's a God and a devil. Set that aside for a second. Let's look at what the Bible says. Isaiah 45:7. Here's what it says. And God said, and God said, right? This isn't the prophet Isaiah or someone else. And God said to Isaiah, I form the light and create the darkness. What more need be said? But I form the light and create darkness. I bring prosperity and I create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things. So, the truth is, there's only one God, right? So when you see people and you say, oh, they're devil worshippers and they're occultists worshiping the devil, you're wrong. There's no devil. The devil is a pretend thing. You're worshiping something that doesn't exist, or you're giving praise to something that doesn't exist. Like when people say, oh, the insert animal here, because I forgot what it was. It was a bird, I'm pretty sure. It's like the raven or a crow. They say, oh, it was the owl, right? Like Drake, the rapper, he's got an owl as his logo. When you say, oh, that is a sign of the devil, you are taking something that God created and giving the devil that doesn't exist credit for it. You're taking something alive and real and turning it into something imaginary that doesn't exist. Nothing is a sign of the devil. There's no such thing. No such thing as devil worshiping. It doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because I'm sure there's people that believe there is a devil and there is a way to worship him, but he doesn't exist at all. I form the light and create darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things. There is no devil worship. There is no devil. There is no animal or sign of evil. None. Maybe it's there just to scare you, from somebody wanted to scare you, but there ain't none. There is no Satan worship, Lucifer worship, Lilith. Who the hell? There is no Lilith worship, because that was the thing. None of it. There is one God who has been identified since as far back as time goes, right? There's only been one God. The moral, intelligent, you could say, man identifies there is one God and worships him. And because he does, he prospers. Because the God of Isaac and Abraham and Jacob, he is the God of prosperity. So, and meanwhile, the masses, you could call them, the general population, they create idols, and they reject what God wants them to do, and they do what they want to do. Right. I hope you get what I'm saying. So, so there's one God who makes good and evil, rewards and punishes. Okay? The devil's not coming to get you. You did wrong, and you're punished for it by the one Creator. When there's darkness in you, you see darkness around you. But let's see what God is about. Okay? Man is evil. God is good. All men, nearly all men, 99%, and I use that number for a reason, 99% of men and women are evil. Children don't know any better. You can't sin. You can't feel guilty for something if you didn't know it was wrong. And it's a lot to do with that guilt. But let's see what God does, right? This one and only God who created man, and then man said, I'm going to go do what I want. We know he's the God of the living, right? Anything that is alive, God is in it. Also, it is in God. Life. So, God of the living, the God of Isaac and Jacob and Abraham. He is the God of prosperity. We talked about that. Those who prosper do so only because of God. You can't do anything without God. Right. So, those who prosper do so only because of God. That isn't everyone, of course, right? Because the Bible tells us there are merchants who have decided to go their own way and make money with deception. Commercial codes. That's it. Those are the closest you can get to the devil. That's it. It's man. That isn't everyone. There are those who prosper because of schemes. Schemes like closing the world down and then funneling a bunch of money to where they have investments to eventually get that money themselves. Like $1.4 billion to Egypt. But that's another video. So, we're talking about, now we're going to move on to God's people. Okay? We know what good and evil are. We know that there's only one God. That's it. And now we need to know who God's people are and how you can be one of those, which, if you know God's laws, you can be one anyway. So we're talking about God's people. Those who wish to do right. And they would not harm others for personal benefit. They don't steal. They don't lie. They don't put their feelings into things that praise other imaginary gods. Fornication. Thank you, Big Sib. They're good people, right? Good people are God's people. People who love the Lord and their neighbor. So, to make the distinction between the two, all you have to do is look for who they obey, right? We have a system of commercial codes that are all pretend. They're based on nothing, and they're enforced by men who were never given authority in the first place. No man has ever lived who had the authority to lock other people in cages. It's never happened. These men came to a place here where it's supposed to be peaceful and God's children are, and they decided to do things their own way, right? And this is Luciferian, the commercial codes. Satan worshipers, whatever you want to call them. It's pretend. It doesn't exist. There's no actual authority behind it, okay? People who obey those pretend codes, those are not God's people, right? Those are the devil worshipers, whatever. They're dead. Corporations. That's what the commercial codes are all about. Corpse. And corpse orated. Those codes, right? They're the codes of death. Opposite God's laws of life, which are simple. These codes are incredibly complex, and they govern dead entities. Corporate fiction, all of that. Living men do not and cannot be entrapped by these codes. Like, if you're alive, these codes ain't for you. If you're alive and you submit to these codes, you're dead. It's that simple. Those who are God's people, they obey God's laws, and they refuse to. It's not so much like there's commercial codes that says don't steal, right? But you don't not steal because the code says so. It just happens to line up with what God told you anyway. Those are God's people. They love. They don't hate. So these codes of death, they come from Babylon. The codes of Hammurabi. It was a complete code set. The commercial codes, they turn men into property. You, who you are, what you've done, that doesn't matter. What matters is this code says, if this happens, input this factor and you get a result. Dead. They're not God's people. Because we went over above. So when Jesus spoke to this crowd, he told them they were evil. If you, being the ones who are evil, so on and so forth, if you choose to obey man and his pretend codes, you are evil. Evil equals death, right? Evil must die. It has to. But life is eternal, and it's love, and it's wisdom, and it never dies. So, if someone obeys God's laws, they live in love, you love others, and they're prosperous, it's a good chance those are God's people. There's a reason that I'm even bothering with this, because there's a lot of people that I'm pretty sure the way that they behave and they carry themselves and they're so genuine, right? Those are God's people. So we generalize this, right? And we call them the artists. Those are God's people. Yep. But that's where art comes from, is love. And not just love, but feeling great unconditional love and then losing it. Those people, right? Those people who love, and they're just great, humble, beautiful people. Those people are the ones who are tormented by the beast. So, let's talk about Q for a second, right? Because this fits in perfectly. Here's what we know. Whether Q is or is not part of the Trump thing, it's still a military operation. No way around it. If Trump is involved and knows about Q, then it's part of the government. If Trump doesn't know about Q, then still, it's military part of the government, right? It's not just one guy sitting at his computer, okay, playing pretend. That's not what's going on there. That is the system. No one believes that anyway. Nobody in the world thinks that it's just one dude playing on his computer who raised up an army, so to speak. Let's make a comparison, though. You want to? It's going to be fun. And this is one of the things I was talking about with people might get mad. QAnon says, where we go one, we go all. So, what if one of those person goes to a really bad place? We going with him? That's why I stopped bothering with the whole Q thing. I was like, wait, hold on. Anyway, QAnon says where we go one, we go all. Right? We compare that to the Pope and Fratelli Tutti, which just came out, saying, once more, we realize that no one is saved alone. We can only be saved together. Why do we compare these? Because they're the same message. Same thing being said. Where we go one, we go all. We can't be saved separate. We have to be saved together. It's the same message. Q, any way you slice it, whether national thing or international thing, doesn't matter. Q is part of the beast. It's that simple. And not like Q is clearly part of the military. Clearly. Talking about not trials. It's military trial for people who have been accused of heinous crimes without any physical evidence being presented. Right? That's wrong. The accusations, no. If you don't know those people, no. So, Q is the thing accusing these artists, right? And I'm sure some of them are bad people, who knows, of heinous crimes. And again, I'm not saying they're innocent, and I'm not saying they're guilty. But let me ask you this, right? We got like a page left. Let me ask you this, okay? Brace yourself, because this is going to be a deep question. You and I, right? We know there is one God. One God, and that's it, okay? One God. Angels don't have free will, so whatever. My point is, there can't be angels don't have free will, and there are angels who use free will. You can't have both. You can't. So, back to the question. If there is one God, right? You and I, we know that for a fact. That's what Isaiah says. There's no debate whatsoever. Okay? There's no God and devil. There is only one God. That's it. There is one God who rewards and punishes. Right? We on the same page about that? So if this one God rewards and punishes, what is the benefit of child sacrifice? That's one of the things that Q talks about, right? He says, they sacrifice children. Why? There's only one God. He's not going to reward that, right? And their commercial codes ain't going to help them with that either, because they're pretend. It's a fear tactic. It's to put fear in people. So, there's one God who rewards and punishes. What is the benefit of this accused child sacrifice? I hear about this shit all the time. Some music star sacrificed some other music star, and then they got successful. He sold his soul to the devil. How do you sell something that ain't yours to something that doesn't exist? So, do you think that if somebody sacrificed a child, God would give them money for that? Oh, here you go. Here's you a big mansion and a house. Maybe it's the exact opposite of that. Maybe these people die for whatever reason, and I'm not saying this is what happens. I'm saying maybe they do what's right, and they succeed because they know there's one God and they serve Him appropriately, rather than creating false idols. Because every song that's ever been written is about God and Jesus. It's always about the woman, some water, a phone call. All those things are the same thing. It's about the subconscious mind where God dwells. That is the woman. The phone call is when you meditate until God shows up. As long as your tent is clean, God will come and visit you. That's what music is for. It praises God. Not some of the crap that's been on lately, but real music is everything. Everything praises God. Everything. You can't get around it. Because there's only one God. And if you don't see that everything praises God, it's because you did something wrong and you were scared about it. So, would God give them money for harming a child? Why would He do that? When we know what Jesus said about harming children. If you were to harm one of these little ones, you would be better tying a millstone around your neck and being tossed into the sea. So how does child sacrifice benefit anyone ever? Every time that's been used as an excuse, you should just forget about it.